Declassified. I'm Nathaniel Shepard, your host on behalf of author Daniel P. Douglas. In this series, we reveal real Cold War secrets and excavate the classified details your government hoped you'd never discover. And here we go. Project AQUILINE, when the CIA built nuclear-powered robot birds. It was April 1969, and while the world prepared to watch Neil Armstrong walk on the moon, a classified team at McDonnell Douglas was solving a different problem. How do you keep a surveillance drone flying for months without landing? Their solution was unusual, even by Cold War standards. They would build a mechanical bird and power it with plutonium. This wasn't the folly of Project Acoustic Kitty, or the absurdity of weaponized homosexuality. This was something different. A glimpse of 21st century warfare built with 1970s technology, a program so ambitious that most of its documentation remains classified 50 years later. Welcome to Project AQUILINE, where the line between visionary engineering and institutional ambition blurred into something genuinely unprecedented. The problem that needed an unusual solution. By 1969, the CIA had a surveillance crisis. The U-2 spy plane program was compromised. Gary Powers had been shot down over the Soviet Union in 1960. Satellites were predictable, their orbits calculated by enemy mathematicians. Ground-based assets couldn't penetrate the vast interiors of China or the Soviet Union. What the agency needed was something that could loiter over denied territory for weeks or months. Something that wouldn't trigger air defense systems. Something that could fly low, slow, and undetected while transmitting intelligence back to handlers thousands of miles away. The solution came from an unexpected direction. Nature had already solved this problem. Birds could cross international borders and military installations without raising alarms or triggering defensive responses. The biomimetic breakthrough. The initial AQUILINE proposals from 1967 show remarkable sophistication in their thinking. This wasn't about making a plane that looked like a bird. This was about creating something that moved like a bird, behaved like a bird, and to any observer, registered as a bird. McDonnell Douglas engineers studied actual bird flight patterns obsessively. They analyzed wing beat frequencies, gliding ratios, and flocking behaviors. They discovered that large birds like eagles and vultures could soar for hours on thermals, expending minimal energy. A mechanical bird following these patterns would be essentially invisible to visual observation. The aerodynamics were challenging but solvable. By 1969, they had working prototypes that could fly. The real problem was power. Battery technology of the era meant a conventional drone could fly for maybe an hour. AQUILINE needed to fly for months. The nuclear solution that made perfect sense. In 2025, suggesting a nuclear-powered drone sounds insane. In 1969, it sounded innovative. The Atomic Energy Commission was actively promoting radioisotope thermoelectric generators, RTGs, for everything from lighthouses to weather stations. The Systems for Nuclear Auxiliary Power, or SNAP program, had already put nuclear power in space. The Army was developing nuclear power plants that fit in shipping containers. Nuclear power was the solution to every energy problem. For AQUILINE, the math was simple. A plutonium-238 RTG, the size of a coffee can, could generate power for 87 years. No refueling, no landing, no maintenance, just continuous, silent power generation from radioactive decay. The classified specifications, partially revealed in documents released through the Freedom of Information Act in 2019, show a device of stunning ambition. Wingspan, 5 feet, later versions up to 10 feet. Weight, 35 to 50 pounds, including nuclear power source. Operational altitude, 500 to 20,000 feet. Endurance, potentially unlimited, minimum 30 days. Payload, cameras, electronic intelligence sensors, possibly chemical detection equipment. This wasn't a toy or an experiment. This was a weapon system. The primitive AI challenge. Here's where AQUILINE becomes genuinely visionary. The bird couldn't be remote controlled over China. Radio signals would give away its position and purpose. It had to fly itself. In 1970, before microprocessors, before GPS, before any of the technology we associate with autonomous flight, AQUILINE engineers were building what we'd now call an AI-powered drone. The navigation system they developed used magnetic field detection for general heading, terrain matching using onboard photographs compared to target imagery, celestial navigation using sun and star positions, and pattern recognition for identifying targets. They were essentially trying to create computer vision with 1960s technology. The processing unit, built by Texas Instruments, weighed 15 pounds and had less computing power than a modern car key fob. Yet declassified tests from 1971 show it could navigate predetermined routes and identify specific buildings for photography. The persistent classification mystery. Unlike many Cold War programs we've covered, AQUILINE's story doesn't end with clear failure or cancellation. It simply vanishes into classification around 1974. The last declassified mentions show successful flight tests at Area 51 in 1971. Technology transfer to other classified programs in 1973. Budget allocations through 1974 that suddenly shift to different line items, and references in other documents to bird-derived assets through 1976. Did nuclear-powered robot birds actually fly over China or the Soviet Union? The CIA won't say. When pressed under FOIA requests, they claim no operational records exist, but they also won't confirm the program was cancelled. What we do know is that several AQUILINE technologies appeared in other programs. The miniaturized nuclear power systems showed up in classified satellite programs. The terrain matching navigation became part of cruise missile guidance, and the biomimetic design principles influenced later drone development, the modern Echo. Today, when we watch Predator drones loiter over battlefields for 24 hours, we're seeing AQUILINE's vision realized with conventional technology. When the Pentagon reports unidentified aerial phenomena behaving like no known aircraft, some researchers wonder if we're seeing AQUILINE's descendants. In 2019, the CIA released declassified designs from the 1970s showing AQUILINE-derived designs for drones that could morph their wing shape in flight, harvest energy from atmospheric electrical differentials, and navigate using quantum magnetic field detection. These design registrations were filed in 1973. They describe capabilities we're only now approaching with modern technology. The uncomfortable questions. AQUILINE forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about classified programs. If they were building nuclear-powered autonomous drones in 1970, what are they building now? The 50-year classification timeline means we won't know what flies today until 2075. The program also highlights a persistent pattern in American intelligence. When faced with a technical challenge, the response is always to push the boundaries of the possible, regardless of consequence. Need surveillance over China. Build a nuclear bird. Can't recruit enough spies. Drug unwitting citizens with LSD. Enemy using tunnels. Develop a nuclear tunnel boring machine. AQUILINE wasn't crazy. That's what makes it unsettling. Every decision made logical sense. Birds don't trigger air defenses. True. Nuclear power lasts essentially forever. True. Autonomous systems can't be jammed. True. Biomimetic design provides perfect camouflage. True. The individual pieces were all reasonable. Combined, they created something that still sounds like science fiction. The technical legacy. Declassified budget documents from 1975 show AQUILINE cost approximately $125 million over its visible lifetime. That's roughly $800 million in today's dollars. For that investment, the CIA got pioneering work in drone technology decades ahead of its time. Miniaturized nuclear power systems still classified. Early autonomous navigation that predated GPS. And biomimetic design principles used in modern drones. Whether they got operational nuclear birds flying over enemy territory remains unknown. The CIA's blanket response to questions about operations between 1971 and 1976 is cannot confirm or deny. The verdict. Project AQUILINE represents something different from the Cold War programs that make us laugh or horrify us. It wasn't impractical like turning cats into surveillance devices. It wasn't evil like dosing civilians with LSD. It was unusual in the most unsettling way. It was way ahead of its time. The engineers working on AQUILINE were trying to solve tomorrow's problems with yesterday's technology. They nearly succeeded. Or did they? The fact that we don't know if they actually succeeded makes it more unsettling. Somewhere in the classification vaults, there might be documents about nuclear-powered birds flying over China. Or there might be records of cancelled prototypes. We simply don't know. Those vaults do hold records of test results from autonomous drones navigating without GPS in 1972. Yet there are operational records that won't see daylight until everyone involved is dead. AQUILINE wasn't abandoned because it failed. The technology was transferred, evolved, classified deeper. The nuclear birds became something else, something that maybe operates today in forms we won't understand for another 50 years. That's the real lesson of Project AQUILINE. The unusual programs are the ones that work. The crazy ones get declassified and become historical curiosities. The unusual ones disappear into the black budget and evolve. So the next time a bird circles overhead just a little too long, remember, the CIA once put nuclear reactors in mechanical birds. The unusual thing isn't that they tried. The unusual thing is we don't know if they stopped. And there it is, another documented descent into the declassified, filed properly, stamped accordingly, and revealed at last. I'm Nathaniel Shepard, your host on behalf of author Daniel P. Douglas. Be sure to check out Daniel's Substack, The Intelligence Bulletin from author Daniel P. Douglas, for other podcast series, written articles, and links to all of his books. Thank you for listening.